SnowRunner is a truck driving simulation where you deliver cargo and take on many other challenges in an open world that's filled with swamps, bogs, snow-covered mountains, river crossings, and various other harsh environments. It was released in April 2020 by Saber Interactive as the successor to their 2017 release MudRunner, which was in turn a spin-off of 2014's Spin Tires. I've spent a lot of time playing SnowRunner since its release, and in this video, I'll share my thoughts and help you decide whether or not it's worth your time and money in 2023. Before that, here's a quick overview of how I taste test a game. Fun, progression, and aesthetics combine to give you what I call magnetism, which is a measure of how firmly the game grabs and holds on to your attention. To that, I add value for money to get the overall taste. So let's dig in. Fun. In SnowRunner, you're a truck driver who takes on contracts and tasks in sparsely populated locations across the United States, Canada, and Russia. There's no shortage of things to do, including deliveries, vehicle recoveries, scouting, geological exploration, building infrastructure, and even farming, which was added in Year 2. Prior to departing for a job, you'll take some time to plan out your course and decide what equipment you need. But after that, it's up to you to do the driving, and it's this time spent between the waypoints on your journeys that makes SnowRunner special. Don't expect to be cruising along open highways. The majority of driving will be in harsh environments that would overwhelm most cars in a matter of seconds. You'll come across various types of terrain, all of which affect your driving in different ways. Paved roads are the easiest terrain to navigate, but they're not what you might expect. Roads are usually littered with stones and other debris that can damage your truck if you're not careful. They can also feel a bit floaty and unrealistic, especially in smaller vehicles, but you fortunately don't spend much time on them. It's on dirt that you begin to feel what makes SnowRunner unique. The weight of your vehicle and tire rotations deform the ground. Driving dynamics change as your tires start to lose grip, and your progress is slowed. Mud is where things get challenging and the real fun begins. Here you need to pay attention to what gear you're in, whether all-wheel drive and diff lock are engaged, what kind of tires you're using, and so on. If you're not careful, you can get completely stuck, requiring recovery to the nearest garage or rescue by another vehicle. Snow is a lot like mud in that your progress will grind to a halt if you're not prepared. You'll want to equip snow chains, get a good winch, and learn how to effectively use your powertrain before you take on a snowy environment. Ice can provide a pleasant break from the glacial progress you sometimes make in mud and snow. But don't get careless because it can be hiding its own unique pitfalls. Water crossings are yet another type of challenge you'll encounter along your journeys. You'll want to invest in a good snorkel, and be wary of swift currents if you're planning to take on deep water. Complicating the various types of terrain is the complexity of topography in many locations. It's rare that you'll have a flat, smooth road you can just cruise along. Most trips will find you negotiating all sorts of obstacles like steep hills, off-camber roads, tight corners, narrow passages, huge boulders, and the list goes on. There are at least 80 vehicles in the game, and each one has its own set of advantages and disadvantages. Making the right vehicle choice for any task is at least as important as how well you drive. You need to learn how to make the most of the tools available, such as all-wheel drive, differential locks, low gears, winches, cranes, and so on. Different hardware is available on each vehicle, and upgrades are key to maximizing performance. When possible, I suggest you get a winch that works even when the engine is stalled, and make sure to stay within reach of objects you can grab. This is especially important for scout vehicles because it's easy to roll over when exploring remote locations. Winches can get you out of sticky situations, and learning to use them effectively will help you avoid a lot of heartbreak and misery. SnowRunner is a game that doesn't require all your attention all the time. Because of this, you have a couple of options for how to play. First, this is a perfect game to play while you watch TV, listen to a podcast, or do something else that also doesn't require your full attention. But if you don't want to multitask, then the time you spend driving in SnowRunner can become an almost zen-like experience where you're alone with only your thoughts and the sounds of your vehicle as you steadily make your way to the next destination. This might help to explain why, much to my surprise, I had already spent 170 hours in this game before I even began preparing this review. At first I thought I must have left the game running in the pause menu for a few days. But then I remembered how easy it is to get lost for hours on end as you inch ahead towards your next goal. And then the one after that, and then just one more. The fun in SnowRunner is savory. Progression. There are a few layers of progression in SnowRunner, which can be broadly grouped into two categories: maps and vehicles. The number of maps available to you will depend on which version of the game you have. There are currently a total of 33 maps which are spread across 12 regions. 5 in the United States, 2 in Canada, and 5 in Russia. You're free to visit any of the regions, so you're not trapped in a linear progression. However, the difficulty of each region does tend to increase as you move along the menu, so it's a good idea to spend some time on the easier maps before you jump into the deep end. To progress on each map, you take on the available contracts and tasks, and gradually check off each one until you've finished them all. The contracts are part of a longer-term set of jobs you perform for a company, while the tasks are typically one-off requests to recover a truck, scout out some locations, or something else along those lines. It's a good idea when you enter a new map to get into a scout vehicle and visit all the towers as soon as you can. Doing this increases what's visible to you on the map and makes your life easier as you start to take on jobs in the area. I suggest you don't spend too much time on early maps. I initially tried completing every task on a map before moving on to the next one, but you may be able to find some better vehicles on other maps, which will make the contracts on earlier maps easier to complete when you go back to them. The other primary type of progression in SnowRunner is obtaining and upgrading vehicles. You start off with a handful of very basic vehicles that can get the job done in the early parts of the game, but you quickly start wanting something better. There are two main ways to get additional vehicles. One is by purchasing them at the store, and the other through discovering them at various locations on the map. You don't make a lot of money completing missions, and most vehicles are relatively expensive. So getting them for free through discovery is typically how you'll add to your garage. There's a couple of other ways to get vehicles outside of gameplay. One is by purchasing DLC, and the other is by downloading mods. As I mentioned before, there are currently more than 80 vehicles available in SnowRunner. Many are included in the base game, some are part of yearly passes, and others are part of standalone packages. Sorting it all out is a little difficult, but regardless of whether you decide to buy DLC content, you'll have more than enough selection of trucks. The modding community for SnowRunner is active, and there are literally thousands of mods available. About 1,800 of those are vehicles. For now, though, I've decided not to use any of them. In my first playthrough, I got up to level 18, and after feeling frustrated with some challenging deliveries, I decided to download some mods. And to be honest, they kind of spoiled the game for me. I found an overpowered vehicle that could just cruise through almost anything. It took away so much of the challenge that playing the game just became boring. I'm not against mods at all, and if you enjoy playing with them, that's great. But for me, I'm happy playing the vanilla game as it was designed by the developers. I enjoy the steady progression and how it's balanced out by a gradually increasing level of challenge. If you want to avoid using mods, but still want some slightly overpowered vehicles, I suggest you look into getting the TUZ 420 and the Western Star 6900 Twin Steer. You'll need to invest some time into finding them, but that effort will pay dividends in the long run. After you have a truck you like, you can make all sorts of modifications to it. Many of them will improve performance in some way. Others enable you to complete certain tasks. And some are purely cosmetic. More upgrades become available as you level up, or after you locate them somewhere on a map. And I haven't even mentioned trailers, which are another critical category of the tools available. You'll find some scattered around the map, and you can purchase certain trailers for most vehicles. It takes a little while to figure out how everything fits together, but it eventually makes sense. The process of upgrading vehicles, taking one step at a time to gradually improve both appearance and performance, makes for a pretty satisfying progression experience. In addition to all of this, consider that new DLC content is still being released this year in the Year 3 Pass. The combination of all these factors makes SnowRunner's progression spicy. Aesthetics. If you watch my videos, you'll know that I love beautiful games, and SnowRunner is definitely one of them. Assets are more on the realistic side, and lighting effects are pleasing, especially at sunrise and sunset. You'll occasionally want to take a break from a long day of trudging through the mud and just soak in the scenery for a moment. The way the terrain deforms is something special that I don't recall seeing in any other game. This deformation is a core aspect of the gameplay, but Saber Interactive has also made it look appealing, both while it's happening and in your wake. Like a recording of where you've been today. They also managed to give us water that looks better than most, and it applies realistic forces on your vehicles. Ambient noises from the environment are pleasing, but as you would expect, they are usually drowned out by the sounds of your vehicle. There's an interior camera available, and you can add some decorations in the cab to make yourself feel more at home. But driving from this perspective almost feels like you're driving blind. Especially when you find yourself in more challenging situations, you really need to look around the exterior of your truck to see what's going on. You'll constantly be rotating the camera to see what's on either side. How much you're leaning to the left or right, whether your tires are spinning, and so on. One thing to note is that as beautiful as SnowRunner is, you're completely alone in the world. Alone, that is, unless you play online with a friend. Otherwise, there's no traffic or any other human activity in the game. It can be a pretty lonely place. But I understand why the developers decided to take this approach. Not only would adding traffic and other AI to the game complicate development and impact performance, but it would be a nightmare to complete most missions if you also needed to worry about other vehicles getting in the way. On second thought, maybe a nightmare mode with traffic could be added to their next title as an option to increase difficulty. The aesthetics in SnowRunner are savory. Magnetism. The fact that I spent 170 hours playing this game before I decided to do this review should provide a strong indication of SnowRunner's magnetism. And that should be further reinforced when I confess that this has now increased to almost 200 hours. It didn't take anywhere close to 30 hours just to record this footage. For some reason, I just didn't want to put down my controller and get back to work. SnowRunner's gameplay is engaging, it offers long-term, rewarding progression, and it looks great. This is a case where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and I have no choice but to call SnowRunner's magnetism spicy. Value for money. To be honest, the price of SnowRunner isn't that clear. The base game is currently $30, and beyond that, there's a lot of add-on content available. You can choose from yearly passes, seasons, standalone vehicles, and vinyl wraps. I think the intention of the publisher was to give customers the ability to purchase only what they want, but the result is somewhat confusing and off-putting. The need to charge for the game is completely justified, and I have no issues compensating the developers for the wonderful work they've done. But the overly complicated and somewhat pricey paywall is unfortunate. It takes a while to be 100% certain about what you're getting, and you feel a little like someone's trying to trick you. I suggest you get the base game to see if you like SnowRunner. If you want to consider adding DLC content later, start by looking at the year 1, 2, and 3 passes, and not the seasons and other packages. I paid $60 for a version that included years 1 and 2, so if you calculate how much time I've spent versus how much money I spent, so far it comes out to around 30 cents per hour. That's pretty good value if you ask me. The value per mile of SnowRunner is strong, but that's tarnished a little bit by the confusing and somewhat pricey DLC sales model. SnowRunner's value for money is bittersweet. The overall taste of SnowRunner is savory. It's savory like your favorite sausage and pepperoni pizza, and I strongly recommend you give it a spin. There are so many more things I would love to cover in this video, but there's just too much to explain all at once. If you want to know more about SnowRunner, several YouTube channels have a lot of dedicated content. I particularly enjoy Ben Griffin's channel, A Tribe Called Cars. There's a link below in case you're interested. Another resource I recommend is maprunner.info. On this site, you'll find a well-organized collection of valuable information, including detailed maps of each region. Generally, I would encourage everyone to discover things on your own. But if you're anxious to find a specific upgrade or a vehicle you really want to unlock, this site is invaluable. If you made it this far, I'm sure it's because you were waiting for the right time to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments if you have a suggestion for my next taste test.